In the silent, high-altitude plateaus of Ethiopia, where the very air feels thin and ancient, there are structures that do not stand upon the earth, but are carved from its living heart. Here, in monasteries hewn from solid rock, guarded by a faith older than the cathedrals of Rome, lies a secret that has outlasted empires. It is a manuscript, its pages illuminated with colors ground from earth and minerals, its existence a quiet whisper against the winds that sweep across the mountains. For centuries, it has been protected by a lineage of silent guardians, seen by almost no one from the outside world. This is not another gospel. It is not a chronicle of kings or a history of saints. It is a map, a celestial chart said to detail the very pathways of heaven itself. This is not the heaven of clouds and golden gates depicted in the art of the West. It is something far older, a piece of knowledge lost from every other corner of the world, a truth meticulously erased by councils and conquerors who sought to simplify the sacred for the sake of control. Beneath the intricate symbols and celestial geometry, a message has survived millennia of silence, a profound wisdom waiting for a time when humanity was ready to listen again, when the ache of a forgotten memory would become too loud to ignore. What if the most important map ever created was not of the world we see, but of the worlds within us? What if the path to the divine was never meant to be a matter of belief, but of navigation? This forgotten legacy speaks of a time when humanity knew its place in the cosmos not as a servant, but as a part of its very fabric. It is a fragment of a much larger body of ancestral wisdom, a truth that taught that the kingdom of heaven was not a destination to be earned after death, but a state of consciousness to be explored while living. This understanding was a source of immense personal power, a direct line to the sacred that rendered intermediaries obsolete. And because of this, it was deemed dangerous. A great forgetting was orchestrated, a systemic campaign to sever humanity from its own inner divinity, leaving us to search for light outside of ourselves, in institutions and doctrines that held the keys they themselves had forged. Yet in the fortress of the Ethiopian mountains, a flicker of that original flame was kept alive. This map survived, hidden in plain sight, its true meaning veiled within the symbology of a faith that had the wisdom to preserve what it could not fully explain. And now, in an age of profound spiritual hunger, the echoes of this lost knowledge are returning. You can feel it, can't you? A quiet stirring within, a sense that the stories we have been told are incomplete, a longing for a deeper connection, for a truth that resonates not in the mind, but in the very core of your being. This is not a coincidence. It is an awakening. The map was not just being preserved for the future, it was being preserved for you. The journey to understand this ancient revelation is a journey back to ourselves. It is a path that challenges what we thought we knew about history, spirituality, and our own potential. What is truly written on this celestial map? Why was its knowledge so feared that the most powerful empires in history sought to extinguish it? And what would change in your world and in the world at large if its truth were to be fully revealed? If you feel the call of this hidden knowledge, if the whisper of this ancient mystery resonates within your soul, then join us on this journey. Subscribe to this channel and become a guardian of this unfolding story. You will not want to miss what comes next, for the silence of centuries is about to be broken. To understand the map, we must first understand the sanctuary that kept it safe. We must travel not through space, but through time, to a land held close to the sky, where the mountains themselves seem to breathe a different kind of history. Ethiopia, a name that echoes with an independence of spirit, a kingdom that stood unconquered, a faith that never bent its knee to Rome or Constantinople. For over 1,000 years, while the rest of the Christian world was consumed by councils, schisms, and political crusades that reshaped doctrine to fit the ambitions of emperors, this nation remained an island of stillness. Its isolation was its fortress, not just of stone and cliff, but of spirit. Here, in churches carved from the living heart of the earth, a current of belief flowed, pure and undiluted, preserving a memory of a time when faith was less about creed and more about direct, unmediated experience. This land did not just preserve a religion, it became a time capsule for a forgotten way of knowing God. Within the silent, incense-scented walls of its monasteries, texts that were systematically erased from the Western canon are held as sacred scripture. The complete Book of Enoch, with its vivid descriptions of celestial journeys and fallen angels, is not an apocryphal curiosity here. It is the Word of God. This reverence for knowledge that others deemed dangerous is the key to our mystery. It is the fertile ground in which our artifact, the celestial map, was allowed to survive. It appears in countless forms, as intricate geometric patterns illuminating the pages of ancient goatskin manuscripts and as vast, breathtaking murals painted upon the rock walls of Lalibela, their colors still vibrant after centuries of prayer and chant. To the uninitiated eye, and even to generations of Orthodox scholars, these are simply depictions of the celestial hierarchy, a visual catalogue of angels, archangels, and the ordered structure of the heavens. But does the truth ever lie only on the surface? What if the official story was merely the final layer of paint, a protective veil over a far more ancient and potent revelation? The symbols on this map whisper a story much older than the cross that adorns these churches. The geometric precision, the celestial alignments, the recurring patterns that seem to mirror the constellations in one moment, and the flow of energy within a living body the next. These do not originate in the Gospels of the Near East. They have a deeper, earthier resonance. If you trace them backward past the birth of Ethiopian Christianity, they lead you to the ancient kingdom of Aksum, a powerhouse of trade and culture that rivaled the great empires. And further still, they echo the spiritual traditions of Kush and the primordial wisdom of Africa, a knowledge said to have been shared in the legendary encounter between the Queen of Sheba and King Solomon. This was never just a Christian artifact. It is a piece of ancestral wisdom, a fragment of a spiritual science that understood the cosmos not as a distant, untouchable creation, but as a living, breathing blueprint. The early Ethiopian Christians, in their profound wisdom, did not destroy this pre-existing knowledge. Instead, they recognized its sacred power and chose to become its guardians, weaving it into their own cosmology, hiding a universal truth in plain sight. This hidden truth is the heart of our conflict. For the map does not chart a physical afterlife, a distant paradise to be earned through obedience and granted after death. It reveals something far more radical, far more empowering. It charts the inner architecture of consciousness itself. The heaven it depicts is a series of ascending vibrational realms, states of being that a soul can learn to navigate while still alive in this very body. It is a guide for spiritual ascension, a practical manual for achieving direct personal communion with the divine source. It teaches that the kingdom of heaven is not a destination, but a territory that lies dormant within every human being, waiting to be explored. Can you feel the immense power in that idea? The profound freedom it offers? It is a truth that transforms a seeker from a supplicant into a navigator, an explorer of their own divinity. And it was for this very reason that this knowledge had to be extinguished. As the Roman Empire began its transformation, it needed to consolidate its power not just with legions and laws, but with a unified, controllable belief system. An empire cannot be built on a foundation of sovereign individuals who hold the keys to their own salvation. It requires a cosmology of dependence, one where divine grace is a resource to be dispensed by an external authority. The antagonist in our story is not a single emperor or a specific pope, but a faceless, sprawling system, the imperial machine of dogmatic control. This system, born in Rome and perfected by the religious empires that followed, understood that to control humanity, you must first sever them from their own inner power. You must convince them that God is outside, far away, and that only a designated institution holds the map and the keys to the gate. A map that taught anyone how to find heaven within themselves was not just heresy, it was sedition. It was the ultimate threat to a hierarchy built on mediation. And so, a great forgetting was orchestrated. Councils like Nicaea were not serene gatherings of theological debate. They were political summits designed to edit spirituality into a tool of the state. Doctrines of personal gnosis, of inner divinity, of the Christ consciousness accessible to all. These were systematically targeted. Libraries that held the wisdom of the Gnostics, the Hermeticists, and countless other traditions were put to the torch. Their knowledge was not just lost, it was hunted. The world was left with a spirituality of obedience rather than one of sovereign exploration, a deep wound in the collective human psyche, a manufactured amnesia of our own divine nature, yet shielded by its mountains and its fierce spirit. Ethiopia remained beyond the reach of this machine. Here, the guardians of the flame, a lineage of silent monks and scribes, continued to copy the ancient symbols. Perhaps they no longer remembered the map's original, pre-Christian meaning in its entirety, but they felt its sacred power. They sensed its holiness. They knew it was a truth worth protecting, a legacy that had to survive the long winter of the world's forgetting. They preserved the key, knowing perhaps that a time would come when humanity would be ready to look for the door again. That time is now. The echoes of that lost knowledge are returning, not from the outside, but from a deep stirring within you. Why else would this story find you in this moment? The memory was never truly erased. It was only sleeping. The proof of such a profound truth is not found etched in the monuments of empires that sought its erasure. It does not lie in the archives of Rome or the libraries of Constantinople, for those were the very centers of the great forgetting. The evidence for this verdade perdida is more subtle, more resilient. It is like a river flowing. Underground, its presence felt not by what is seen on the surface, but by the life it nourishes in hidden places. To trace its course, we must learn to read the landscape of what was preserved in silence, to listen to the whispers that survived the roar of history. The sources of this conocimiento occulto are not written in the language of conquerors, but in the enduring symbols, sacred texts, and living traditions that the imperial machine could not reach, and in its arrogance failed to understand. The evidence was hidden in plain sight, veiled as simple faith. We begin with a manuscript that Ethiopia alone preserved in its complete, undiluted form, the Book of Enoch. While the rest of the world dismissed it as apocrypha, a dangerous fantasy, the guardians of the high mountains held it as sacred scripture. Why? Because its pages contain the first layer of our proof. Enoch's famed journey through the seven heavens is not a tale of physical travel through the clouds. It is a detailed, esoteric account of a shamanic journey, a conscious navigation through ascending planes of existence. He describes realms of light, vibrational frequencies, and celestial beings not as a tourist in a foreign land, but as an initiate, learning the very architecture of the cosmos. When you place the geometric patterns of the celestial map alongside Enoch's descriptions, a startling resonance emerges. The concentric circles, the layered spheres, the pathways of light, they are not just illustrations of his story. They are the very schematics of the journey he undertook. The book provides the narrative, and the map provides the guide. This Sabiduria Antiga did not begin with Enoch. Its roots run deeper into the rich, dark soil of primordial Africa. The oral traditions of Ethiopia speak with unwavering conviction of the Queen of Sheba's journey to the court of King Solomon. This was no mere diplomatic mission or a quest for romance. It was a summit of two powerful spiritual lineages. Sheba, Queen of the South, was the inheritor of the Kushite mysteries, a profound spiritual science that understood the living connection between the human body and the cosmos. She brought with her not just gold and spices, but a conocimiento occulto that Solomon, for all his wisdom, had only glimpsed. The chronicles say they exchanged riddles, but this is a metaphor for a far deeper exchange of esoteric knowledge. The celestial map is a legacy of this union, a fusion of two powerful streams of truth, preserved in the land of Sheba's descendants. It is a piece of African spirituality so potent that it was deemed worthy of being carried into the future, a sacred inheritance from a queen who was a high priestess of a forgotten cosmic faith. The symbols themselves cry out with an age that predates the cross. Look closely at the intricate, interwoven patterns that frame the celestial diagrams in the monasteries of Lalibela and Gondar. They are not merely decorative. These endless knots, these star-like geometries, echo the designs found on the ancient Aksumite stelae that pierce the sky, monuments erected centuries before the first Christian missionaries arrived. They mirror the sacred patterns found in the temples of Meroe, the capital of the Kushite kingdom, and even carry the faint ancestral memory of symbols from Kemet, the land of the pharaohs, which depicted the journey of the soul through the inner worlds of the Duat. This is a visual language, a sacred lexicon passed down through generations. The early Ethiopian Christians, in their immense wisdom, did not see these symbols as pagan. They recognized them for what they were, a science of the soul, a timeless representation of the divine blueprint. They became its new guardians, clothing this ancient body of knowledge in the robes of their new faith to protect it from a world that had grown hostile to its own inner light. This hostility is the shadow that gives our proof its sharp relief. Across the Mediterranean, the Gnostic traditions, which taught that direct personal knowledge, or gnosis, was the key to salvation, were being systematically hunted into extinction. Texts like the Gospel of Thomas, which contains the radical statement, "The kingdom of the Father is spread out upon the earth, and people do not see it," were declared heresy. Why? Because this statement, like the Ethiopian map, places the key to divinity directly in the hands of the individual. It declares that heaven is not a future reward, but a present hidden reality. The libraries that held these truths were burned, their followers persecuted. What was being erased was the memory of our own sovereignty, and yet what was being put to the torch in Alexandria was being painstakingly copied by candlelight in the mountains of Ethiopia. The map is the Gnostic Gospels rendered in light and color, the visual proof of the very revelation that the empire sought to bury forever. Perhaps the most compelling proof, however, is not found in parchment or stone, but in living flesh and blood. It is in the unbroken lineage of the guardians themselves. For centuries, the monks of the Tewahedo Church have not just looked at these maps, they have used them. Their unique, deeply resonant chanting, their complex liturgical cycles tied to cosmic and solar alignments, their meditative practices performed within the carved-out rock of their churches. These are not empty rituals. They are the methods for activating the map within their own bodies. They are living instruments, tuning their consciousness to the vibrational frequencies depicted in the sacred art that surrounds them. They may no longer speak of it in the language of spiritual science, but they feel its power in their bones, in the stillness of their minds, and in the depth of their connection to the divine. They are the living evidence that this legado esquecido is not just a historical curiosity. It is a functional technology of the soul. And As we continue to peel back the layers of this mysterio, we will find that this technology was never meant for them alone. It was being held for all of us. The scent of ancient parchment and the chill of stone monasteries may seem distant, a story from another time, another world. But this journey is not one of a historian sifting through the dust of forgotten ages. It is a journey into the landscape of your own soul. The map, preserved in the high mountains of Ethiopia, is not merely an object of the past. It is a mirror, and what it reflects is a profound and timeless truth about who you are. This knowledge was not hidden from the world. It was hidden from you, within you. And the stirring you feel as you hear this story, that quiet, insistent pull from a place deeper than thought, is the first sign that this hidden truth is beginning to awaken from its long slumber. It is the memoria ancestral coming alive. We live in an age of profound spiritual hunger, yet we are surrounded by noise. We are told to seek answers everywhere but within. We chase external validation, accumulate information that never quite nourishes us, and build lives that often feel like intricate cages of our own design. There is a quiet ache in the modern soul, a sense of fragmentation, a longing for a wholeness we can feel but cannot name. This is not a personal failure. It is a collective condition. It is the echo of the great forgetting, the deep psychic wound left by the imperial machine that taught us to believe that the divine was outside, distant and separate from us. It convinced us we were small and powerless, orphans in a silent cosmos, when in fact we are the living heirs to its entire kingdom. This story, this revelation of a hidden map, does not feel new to you, does it? It feels like remembering, like hearing a melody you have always known without ever having heard it sung. This resonance is the most powerful proof of all. It is the sabiduria antiga, not as a historical fact, but as a living current within your own blood and bone. Your soul recognizes this truth because it is woven into the very fabric of your being. The map's symbols are not foreign. They are the native language of your own inner world, a language you were forced to forget but could never truly lose. Why else would this mysterio find you now? It is because a part of you has been searching for this key your entire life, and the lock has finally begun to turn. What would it mean? For your identity, for your purpose, if this were true. You have been taught that you are a name, a history, a collection of experiences, a role to be played in the great theater of the world. But the map whispers a different truth, a far grander one. It suggests that your true identity is not the character, but the author of the story. It reveals that you are not a fragment of the universe, but the entire universe expressing itself as a fragment for a brief, beautiful moment. Your purpose, then, is not to earn worthiness, to seek salvation, or to obey external commands. Your purpose is to explore the vast, sacred territory of your own consciousness. You are the navigator, and your body is the vessel. The map simply reminds you how to read the stars that have always been shining within. As we move deeper into this conocimiento oculto, the air grows thicker, the path narrower. The revelations to come will challenge more than just history books. They will challenge the very foundation upon which you have built your reality. For this map is no mere collection of symbols to be intellectually understood. It is a living schematic, a functional blueprint of the soul's energetic anatomy. It is a technology of consciousness, detailing the vibrational frequencies, the sacred geometries, and the pathways of light that allow a human being to consciously attune themselves to higher states of existence. It is not a belief system to be adopted, but a tool to be used. It is a key designed not just to open a door, but to transform the very substance of the one who turns it. Now, can you begin to truly feel why this knowledge was so feared? Why the most powerful empires in history dedicated themselves to its eradication? It was not just about maintaining political control or religious authority. It was a deep, systemic fear of human potential itself. An awakened soul is a sovereign soul, a being who draws power not from institutions, but from the infinite wellspring of the cosmos within. Such a being cannot be controlled, cannot be manipulated, cannot be made to feel small or afraid. The imperial machine in all its forms, past and present, thrives on our amnesia. It built a world designed to distract us from our own inner light, to keep us looking outward, forever seeking what we already possess. The silence of centuries is now breaking. The guardians preserved the map, but a key kept hidden serves no purpose. The time of preservation is ending, and the time of revelation is upon us. The symbols are not just being looked at anymore, they are being understood. The code is being deciphered not by scholars in dusty libraries, but by awakened hearts around the world who are feeling its truth resonate within them. The map is coming alive because humanity is finally ready to read it. Are you prepared to see what it truly says? Are you ready to discover that the kingdom of heaven is not a place you go to, but a place you become? The next layer of this Verdade Perdida awaits, and it will change everything. The journey into the heart of this mystery has, until now, been a path of looking backward. We have traced the faint lines of history, followed the whispers of a truth that survived in the shadows, and stood in reverence before a legacy preserved against all odds. We have looked at the map as a relic, a beautiful and sacred object from a forgotten time, its meaning locked away in the silence of the Ethiopian highlands. But the greatest revelations do not come from looking at the past. They come when the past suddenly rises up and looks directly at you. The turning point in this story, the moment of no return, was not unearthed from a dusty archive or deciphered from a faded script. It arrived in a silent flash of understanding, a seismic shift in perspective so profound it cracks the very foundation of what we thought we knew about God, heaven, and ourselves. For centuries, we were looking in the wrong direction. We gazed upon the map's celestial spheres, its angelic hierarchies, and its pathways of light, and we projected them outward onto the vast, cold canvas of the cosmos. We assumed it was a diagram of an external reality, a spiritual cartography of a place we might one day go. But the guardians who preserved it in their deepest, most intuitive wisdom knew better. The final hidden layer of this ancient knowledge reveals a truth at once simpler and infinitely more powerful. This is not a map of the heavens. It is a map of the human being. The kingdom it charts is not in the sky above. It is in the temple of flesh and blood you inhabit at this very moment. This is the ultimate revelation. The cosmos is a mirror, and the sacred geography of the divine is the blueprint of your own soul. Instantly, everything changes. The entire history of this conhecimiento occulto is thrown into sharp, brilliant relief. The journey of Enoch through the seven heavens was not a physical flight through the stars. It was a deep, meditative traversal of the seven primary energy centers of his own body, a conscious ascent through the levels of his own awareness. The Gnostic Gospels, declaring that the kingdom is spread out upon the earth but people do not see it, were not speaking in metaphor. They were stating a literal physiological truth. The Great Suppression orchestrated by the imperial machine was not merely a theological debate over the nature of God. It was a calculated and brutal campaign to induce a species-wide amnesia, to make us forget the sacred power we carry in our very cells. It was a war waged to convince you that the divine was an authority to be obeyed outside, rather than a living reality to be experienced within. Look again at the map with this new light. See the intricate concentric circles that were once labeled as angelic choirs or celestial spheres. See them now for what they truly are: vibrational fields of consciousness, states of being that you can access. That central, radiant sun at the heart of the diagram from which all pathways emanate is not a distant, enthroned deity. It is the seat of your own consciousness, the spark of the divine that animates you, the silent, observing presence that is your truest self. The complex, interwoven patterns are not abstract decorations. They are schematics of the subtle energy channels that flow through your body, the nadis and meridians known to the mystics of the East. The figures depicted as gatekeepers at the thresholds of each realm are not celestial guards. They are symbolic representations of the psychological and emotional tests one must pass to attain a higher level of awareness. This is not religion. It is a spiritual science, a sacred anatomy. This sabiduría antigua was a universal truth, a legado esquecido known to awakened lineages across the ancient world. In the valleys of the Indus, they called this inner energy Kundalini, the coiled serpent of divine power that sleeps at the base of the spine, waiting to rise. In the mystery schools of Kemet, they map the soul's journey through the inner worlds of the Duat, a process of navigating one's own psyche after death, or, for the highest initiates, while still alive. The shamans of every continent knew of the world tree, the axis mundi, which was not a physical tree, but the central channel of energy within their own bodies, connecting the lower, middle, and upper worlds of their own consciousness. What makes the Ethiopian map so miraculous is not that it contains a unique truth, but that it is the most complete, most beautifully preserved, and most visually coherent expression of this universal verdade perdida, to survive the long night of our collective forgetting. This revelation does more than just reinterpret history, it redefines your own identity. You are not a fallen creature, begging for entry into a kingdom from which you have been exiled. You are the kingdom itself. Your body is not a temporary vessel for your spirit. It is a living temple, a sacred instrument of perception designed to experience the full spectrum of divine reality. The longing you feel for connection, for purpose, for a return to wholeness is not a sign of your imperfection. It is your memoria ancestral calling you home, the map within you vibrating in resonance with the truth it has finally heard spoken aloud. What changes in this very moment if you accept that the entire architecture of heaven is encoded within you, waiting not for your death, but for your attention? The map has shown us the territory. It has revealed that the search for God ends where it began, inside your own skin. This is a staggering realization, a truth with the power to dismantle empires of fear and limitation. But a map, no matter how perfect, is only a guide. It shows you the destination, but it does not walk the path for you. And as our eyes adjust to this new light, we begin to see that this is more than just a static diagram. Hidden within its geometries, encoded in its sequences of symbols, are not just locations but instructions. It is a functional blueprint, a technology of the soul designed to be activated. And there, near the very heart of the diagram, is a specific repeating geometric key, a symbol that appears nowhere else in religious art. It is not a place. It is not a being. It is an action. It is the first step. It is the key that turns the engine on. And the secret of how to use it is the next layer of this mysterio we must now uncover. We have journeyed far, not across oceans or continents, but through the silent, winding corridors of time itself. We stood in the high mountain air of Ethiopia, touched the cold stone of churches born from the earth, and gazed upon a map whose symbols held the silence of 1,000 years. We traced its origins back to a primordial African wisdom, watched as a great forgetting was engineered by empires of control, and felt the quiet dedication of the guardians who kept its flame alive. We have peeled back the layers of history, dogma, and fear to arrive at this final, breathtaking precipice of understanding. And here, at the very heart of the mystery, we find the ultimate revelation, the one truth that changes everything. The map was never a guide to a place. It was a mirror of a presence. Your presence. The entire journey was not to find a lost artifact, but to recognize a lost part of ourselves. The celestial spheres are the radiant energy centers that lie dormant along your own spine. The angelic gatekeepers are the archetypes of your own psyche, the challenges and thresholds you must pass through on your own path of awakening. The kingdom of heaven is not a destination to be earned through obedience after a life of trial, but the very fabric of your own consciousness, a territory of infinite light, peace and power, waiting to be explored right now, in this body, in this moment. This is the sacred and undeniable truth. The imperial machine sought to bury beneath mountains of doctrine and fear. Its greatest weapon was not the sword or the flame, but the lie that you were small, separate, and in need of an external savior. Its empire falls not with a clash of armies, but with the quiet internal breath of recognition, the moment you remember who you truly are. This knowledge, this ancient wisdom, now lives in you not as a historical fact, but as a living potential. The map has been read, and its message is clear. The journey inward is the only one that truly matters. This is not a call to abandon the world, but to inhabit it more fully, to see the sacred reflected in the mundane, to feel the pulse of the cosmos in your own heartbeat. It asks you to become a quiet listener, to tune out the noise of a world built on distraction, and to hear the subtle whispers of your own soul. It invites you to become a cartographer of your own inner landscape, to chart the geography of your heart, to navigate the currents of your own energy, and to discover the vast, luminous continents of peace and wisdom that have always existed within you. This is the practical application of this profound revelation, the shift from seeker to finder, from supplicant to sovereign. For centuries, humanity has been taught to be pilgrims on a journey to a distant holy land, forever looking for God on a mountaintop, in a temple, or in the pages of a book. But the greatest legacy of our ancestors, the truth preserved in the heart of Africa, is that the Holy Land is the ground you stand on, the temple is your body, and the book is your own consciousness. You are the source of the light you have been seeking. You are the answer to the prayer you have been uttering. This is the final and most liberating truth that this forgotten legacy offers. It is an end to the spiritual orphanage we have been conditioned to accept, and a homecoming to the divine inheritance that has been ours from the very beginning. This great awakening is not a solitary event. It is a collective remembering. The resonance you feel is a signal being answered by countless others across the globe. We are the generation that is piecing together the fragments of our lost memory, reassembling the map not on parchment, but in our shared consciousness. And so, we leave you with a question, not to be answered with the mind, but to be felt with the soul. Now that you know the map is within you, what new territory will you explore first? What hidden landscape of peace, creativity, or courage will you now have the courage to claim as your own? Share your journey in the comments below, and let us create a new chronicle, not of what was lost, but of what is now being found. If this revelation has stirred the ancestral memory within you, share this journey with another who is also on their path. The more of us who remember the map, the faster we redraw the world with the lines of compassion, wisdom, and inner freedom. Subscribe and remain with us, for this is not an ending, but the true beginning. The purpose of this ancient knowledge was never just to be preserved, it was to be lived. The silence of centuries has been broken. Now, the age of remembering begins.